The invitation had arrived folded in half, tucked neatly inside a plain white envelope. No gold lettering, no festive flourish, just a few lines written in my daughter's hurried hand. "Come for Christmas dinner. Mama will be waiting." I held it under the dim light of my kitchen lamp, its edges catching a faint yellow glow. My old kettle hissed in the background, steam clouding the window where frost had gathered like lace. I pressed the letter to my chest, as if by holding it close, I could bring back the warmth of past Christmases, the ones where the table was long, the laughter loud, and I was not simply a guest, but the center. That night, I pulled out my red scarf, the one my late husband had given me in our first winter together. It smelled faintly of cedar from the old chest where I kept it, soft against my cheek. I draped it around my shoulders and thought, this Christmas, I will not be alone. But when I arrived, breath misting in the cold, scarf tied around my neck, small tin of cookies in my bag, the house stood silent. The lights were off. A wreath dangled crookedly on the door, swaying in the icy wind. I rang the bell once, twice. My knock echoed against wood, unanswered. Only then did I see the note taped hastily to the door. One line, scrawled as if an apology. "Mama, plans changed. We went to the lake house. Merry Christmas." The tin in my hands grew heavy. My scarf seemed tighter, almost choking. The silence pressed in, heavy as snow. I stood there for a long time, until the cold bit deep into my fingers. Finally, I turned away, the cookies clutched against my chest, and walked back down the empty street. The invitation still folded in my coat pocket, mocking me with its promise. The invitation had arrived folded in half, tucked neatly inside a plain white envelope. No gold lettering, no festive flourish, just a few lines written in my daughter's hurried hand. "Come for Christmas dinner. Mama will be waiting." I held it under the dim light of my kitchen lamp, its edges catching a faint yellow glow. My old kettle hissed in the background, steam clouding the window where frost had gathered like lace. I pressed the letter to my chest, as if by holding it close, I could bring back the warmth of past Christmases, the ones where the table was long, the laughter loud, and I was not simply a guest but the center. That night, I pulled out my red scarf, the one my late husband had given me in our first winter together. It smelled faintly of cedar from the old chest where I kept it, soft against my cheek. I draped it around my shoulders and thought, this Christmas, I will not be alone. But when I arrived, breath misty in the cold, scarf tied around my neck, small tin of cookies in my bag, the house stood silent. The lights were off. A wreath dangled crookedly on the door, swaying in the icy wind. I rang the bell once, twice. My knock echoed against wood, unanswered. Only then did I see the note taped hastily to the door. One line, scrawled as if an apology. "Mama, plans changed. We went to the lake house. Merry Christmas." The tin in my hands grew heavy. My scarf seemed tighter, almost choking. The silence pressed in, heavy as snow. I stood there for a long time, until the cold bit deep into my fingers. Finally, I turned away, the cookies clutched against my chest, and walked back down the empty street. The invitation still folded in my coat pocket, mocking me with its promise. Snow fell in a way that makes the world feel far away from itself. Slow, patient flakes drifting through a sky the color of pewter. My boots made small squeaks on the frozen patches, and each breath stitched a thin ghost into the air. Window after window glowed with other people's evenings. A tree blinking in soft pulses, a child tumbling across a couch, the shadow of two heads bent toward each other over a bowl of something steaming. The kind of scenes that look like love, even if they are merely habit. I kept walking because stopping would have meant something had ended, and I was not ready for endings. The red scarf lay against my neck like a remembering hand, warmer than the rest of me. A car passed, then another, tires whispering on wet black asphalt. And I wonder if one of those taillights belonged to my daughter. If I might wave and she might see me, might turn around, might say, "Mama, forgive the last-minute change. Come in, come in. Tell us the story about how you burned the first Christmas turkey, and Dad ate it anyway." But the cars kept going and the night kept widening. I took shelter beneath the awning of a small storefront that had no business being open on Christmas Eve. A bell hung above the door, fog glass painted with a name in curling script that someone had once been proud of. In the corner of the window sat a single poinsettia, its red bracts startling in the dimness, as if the flower had bottled summer and kept it just for this moment. The painted letters read, Tina's Diner. A chalkboard leaned against the glass, smeared by weather. Coffee, pumpkin pie, hot soup. I stepped inside, pulled along by the promise of heat and the kind of company that doesn't demand anything of you. The bell gave a small, ceremonial ring. Warmth washed over me, grease and coffee and cinnamon. The air in diners that seems to have been simmering for decades. The place was nearly empty. A man in a green cap sat hunched over a plate, reading a newspaper as if it could return a world that no longer existed. A young couple shared a milkshake with 2 straws and spoke the language of hands. Back behind the counter, a woman with hair pinned high and a face like gentle weather looked up and smiled as if she had been expecting me. "Merry Christmas," she said. "Sit anywhere you like." I chose a booth near the window where I could see the poinsettia silhouetted against the glass and the soft hush of snow beyond. The vinyl seat sighed under my weight, like an old friend settling by the fire. I placed a cookie tin beside me, a ridiculous little life buoy for a ship already in pieces. The woman came over with a pot of coffee. Cold night to be walking. My daughter invited me for dinner. I said, surprising myself at the honesty. The words hopped out, brave little things, and waited for a landing. Plans changed. The woman's eyes were not pitying, not bright with advice. They were simply there. Open? Well, she said, topping off a cup she had set in front of me. Some plans change, and some plans find you. You hungry? I could eat. Good, she said. That's the first step to most better things. She left me with the coffee, and I wrapped both hands around the mug, letting the heat seep into the deep ache of my fingers. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my small notebook, the one I keep for lists and recipes and the kind of thoughts that visit only when they're sure you're alone. The cover is scarred, buckled at the corners, a testimony to the hands it's been in. Mine, my husband's, once my granddaughter's when she painted a small blue star in a crooked corner and told me it would guide me if I got lost. I turned to a blank page. My handwriting looks like it is running out of breath these days, but I wrote anyway. Christmas Eve, Tina's Diner. The coffee is strong. There's a poinsettia in the window, red against gray. I think of the scarf and the note, and something inside me moves, not breaking, not yet. I paused and the woman returned, a plate in her hands. Turkey sandwich, she said, and I warmed the gravy. And on the house, she placed a slice of pumpkin pie beside it, its surface perfect, creased by light like velvet. Far be it from me to let a person sit with empty hands tonight. What's your name? I asked. She smiled. Tina. And I stopped. There's the name your mother gave you, and then the name your life does. Call me May, I said. My husband used to call me that. My daughter calls me Mom or Ma, rarely Mama. Any more except the notes written hurriedly and taped to doors. Well, May, she said, you let me know if you need anything else. Her hand brushed the table, an accidental kindness, and then she was gone, floating back into the rhythm of the diner. The ring of the bell, the sigh of the grill, the hum of people trying to stay alive through food and small talk. I ate slowly, carefully, as if the act itself was a kind of prayer. The pie tasted of nutmeg, and a promise I couldn't quite name. Outside, the snow fell more densely, shrouding the streetlight in a halo. I could see my reflection dimly in the window, an old woman with a red scarf and a notebook, alone but not empty. I lifted the fork again and thought, if I am to be alone, I want to be alone the way a flame is, not the way a room is when everything is gone from it. Just then, the door opened and the bell gave its small ring. A boy of maybe 9 years stepped in, cheeks raw from the cold, followed by a man who must have been his father. The boy's scarf trailed like a comet. He spotted the poinsettia and stopped, as if dazzled by red, the color of all urgent things. You still got pie? He asked Tina. Always, she said. Pull up a stool. The boy sat. The father sat. The world shifted almost imperceptibly, as if a chair had been moved an inch, and suddenly the room breathed easier. I watched them receive their slices, watched the boy's eyes widen, watched the father's shoulders loosen, and I felt something inside me lean toward them the way a plant bends toward light. I turned a page in a notebook and wrote, "It is still possible to arrive somewhere and be met with warmth." I looked at the poinsettia, at Tina's steady hands, at the boy's delighted concentration, and let the warmth settle where the cold had been. I didn't know then that the boy would turn and speak to me, that the father would confess a thing, that Tina would light a candle and place it on my table as if recognizing a ritual before I did. For the moment, it was enough to see the flame waiting unlit, to hear the boy's spoon clink against china, to feel the grief loosen its fingers just enough for the fork to pass through. The boy was the kind of child who asked questions like a woodpecker at a tree, tapping, patient enough to make a way. He swiveled on his stool and aimed his curiosity my way. "Is that your book?" he asked. I smiled. "It is." "What's in it?" "Recipes," I said, "and things I don't want to forget." "Like what?" I looked down at the page I had just filled. The words seemed shy now that they had company. "Like the way snow looks softer when you see it through a window," I said, "and the way pie feels like a promise." He nodded as if I had given him a secret map. "My mom says promises are like bridges. She says you should only build the ones you're willing to walk across." "Your mom sounds wise." "She is," he said brightly, then dimmed, a cloud passing over his face. She doesn't live with us right now." The father, who had been keeping his eyes on his pie, as though it required guarding, glanced at me and then at Tina. He put a hand on the boy's back. "Eat up, champ." I nodded, not pressing. I have lived long enough to know that stories bloom only when they are ready, like the amaryllis my husband used to coax in winter. Tina arrived to refill my coffee. She set a small candle on my table, plain white, in a thick glass jar. She struck a match, and the moment the flame caught, the diner shifted again, as if something old that had been sleeping opened its eyes. "What's this?" I asked. "Company for you," she said. "I like a candle on a winter night. Makes the world feel less bossy." The candle burned steady and companionable. I thought of all the candles I had lit in my life, for birthdays, for hope, for souls that had gone on ahead. I thought of the one I had not lit tonight at my daughter's house, because there had been no table, no hands to pass the flame to. The father cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said, "you here alone tonight?" "I am," I said. He looked at the candle, at Tina, at the boy. "Us too," he said, and then corrected himself. "Together alone, I guess you could say. Together alone." The phrase settled like a blanket across our small corner of the world. He told me, in the halting way men tell the truth when they are not practiced at it, that he was a mechanic, that the shop had cut hours, that money had been thin and spirits thinner. The boy's mother had moved to her sister's with a promise, perhaps a bridge, that she'd come back when things steadied. They were steadying slowly, like a ship finding its rhythm after a storm. He had promised a boy pie for Christmas Eve. "We used to make it at home," he said, "but the oven..." Well, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. There are ovens that don't heat and promises that don't hold. Both leave a chill that teaches you to carry matches. I listened the way you listen to a clock in the next room, quietly, with a respect for how time sometimes limps. When he finished, I told him a little of my own night, the invitation, the note on the door, the long walk that led to the small raft of light. "That's rough," he said softly. The boy scowled on my behalf, righteous as a small general. "They shouldn't have done that," the boy said, and for a moment I felt 9 years old inside, defended by a temper I did not have to raise myself. Tina placed another slice of pie between us, a third thing to look at when the truth got too bright. "On the house," she said again, and then to me, lower, "You can sit as long as you need, May." I turned to a fresh page in my notebook and wrote, "When people share their storms, the room becomes a harbor." Then, without fully deciding to, I slid the notebook toward the boy. "Would you like to draw a map of your bridge?" I asked. He beamed. He drew a wide arch and then a small figure walking carefully across, a stick figure with a shock of hair. He drew the sun in the corner of the page, the way children do, as if light must be engineered, And then he drew a flower near the bridge's far shore. A poinsettia, red lines crisscrossing like veins. I wondered if he had seen the one in the window, or if his mind had invented it to honor what he sensed we needed. "Look," he said, "we can get across." "Yes," I said, "I believe you can." The father watched the son draw, his mouth a straight line that kept trying to curve upward. He glanced at me. "You got other family, ma'am?" "I have a daughter," I said, "a granddaughter who used to paint stars in my books." "She invite you?" "She did," I said, "but she went to the lake house. Maybe the water felt more like Christmas to her this year." He winced. We were strangers, but the kind who recognize each other easily. Loss is a kind of membership. The boy finished the drawing. I tore the page neatly and handed it to him. "For your refrigerator," I said, and then, because I'm old enough to do as I please, I added, "and if you have no refrigerator, then for your pocket." A pocket can be a wall until you find a better one. He folded it delicately, reverently, and tucked it somewhere near his heart. "Thank you." The candle flame leaned slightly, as if it, too, were paying attention. Outside, the snow slowed, the flakes larger now, lazier, as if satisfied with their work. I sipped my coffee, feeling it unfurl warmth into places I thought winter had claimed for good. Somewhere in the deep of my coat, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. A message from my daughter. "Hope you got the note. Signal is spotty at the lake. Love you, Mama. We'll call tomorrow." I held the phone. I looked at the candle. I looked at the boy's careful pocket, bulging slightly with bridge. I set the phone face down on the table, and, without quite intending to, I reached for my red scarf. I loosened it, let my neck breathe. The knot unspooled with a soft whisper, like thread pulled free from a hem you no longer intend to wear. "Everything okay?" Tina asked from the counter. I said, that I am learning which bridges lead to myself. The boy's father raised his coffee cup slightly, a small toast of whatever that meant. The boy swung his feet, thinking perhaps of suns and flowers, and the way a line becomes a path when you decide to walk it. The candle burned down a quarter inch, and I watched the wax pool and set, the way a heart sometimes does when it has enough company to remember how. The night stretched on, not long in hours, but long in the way memories stretch. A kind of elastic dusk where past and present sit on the same bench and share a cigarette. A couple in their 70s came in, stamping snow from their boots, arguing with the rhythm of people who have loved each other for so long the very cadence of disagreement is affectionate. "You never look for your gloves before you need them," she said. "I like to live dangerously," he said. They sat near the jukebox, ordered chili, shared a single spoon. Later, a young woman with a suitcase and tired eyes slipped into a corner booth, smoothing her hair as if it could smooth the day. She ordered tea and cradled a mug as if it might remind her of a mother somewhere who had taught her that ritual. We were a scattered congregation, each of us bringing our small altars to Tina's counter. The candle at my table flickered and righted itself, as if deciding between dance and vow. At some point, Tina's daughter appeared from the back, a girl with a braid, so long it seemed to have its own old stories. She dressed the counter with sprigs of greenery and then placed a tiny glass dish next to the register with a sign, "Pay what you can. If you can't, Merry Christmas." Tina looked at her with a kind of pride that was half prayer. I envied her that look and, at the same time, felt something like it for strangers I had not known an hour ago. I took out my notebook again. I have always used it less as a ledger than as a lantern. A diner can be a sanctuary. I wrote, "A red scarf can loosen like forgiveness. A poinsettia can be a stubborn blue star pretending to be a flower." I sketched a candle, my hand unsteady but determined. The flame slightly off-center, as if to remind me that perfection is a sterile ambition. My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't pick it up. I let it hum against the wood. Let it be a moth against the window of my attention. I felt the old instinct to be grateful for scraps. Any attention, any invitation, any text that says love you even if it arrives like a receipt after the shop has closed. I let the instinct pass. I grimaced a little. Then I breathed, slow and deliberate, and looked around the world I actually occupied. A boy with a bridge in his pocket, a father pretending not to cry into his coffee, A woman with suitcase hands rediscovering the warmth of tea. A couple arguing like a dance. A daughter arranging sprigs. A mother smiling beneath the weight of her hairpins. Would you like another slice? Tina asked. No, I said, and then, yes, one to go. For breakfast. She laughed. You planning breakfast already? You're my kind of woman. I'm planning what I can hold, I said, and heard in my voice an answer to a question I had not asked myself out loud. When the pie arrived in a small white box, Tina slid across the table as if passing a note in church. And a sprig for luck, she said, tucking a small bit of green under the string. I reached for my wallet. Let me pay. She shook her head. Consider it my invitation. The word landed like a gift, like a velvet-wrapped thing you feel with your hands before you dare unwrap with your eyes. I thought of the note on my daughter's door. Plans change, and the way those words close the door while still pretending politeness. I thought of this new invitation, and the door had opened right here, right now, for as long as I needed. Then let me give something too, I said, and pulled the tin of cookies from my bag. I opened it. The scent of butter and cinnamon rose up like a remembered song. My husband taught me to make these, I said. He would bring a plate to the neighbors every year, even the ones who weren't kind. He said generosity is how you sand the rough edges off a neighborhood. Tina took the tin. Then we'll pass them along. She arranged some on a plate for the counter, others on a small saucer. She slid to the boy. He took one, bit into it, and his eyes widened in a way that tells you have been welcomed into someone's private country, the land where taste and memory share a border without a wall. The young woman with the suitcase lifted her tea in my direction, a silent toast. This is my first Christmas away from home, she said, surprising herself by speaking. I'm catching the night bus. I told my mother I'd be there by morning, but I wanted to sit with strangers a little longer. We are very good at being strangers, I said, and she smiled. The couple by the jukebox argued about the best Nat King Cole song to play on a night like this. Tina's daughter put on the Christmas song, and we all breathed in unison when the strings came in, a small, shared exhale that felt like a blessing. I looked at the candle. I looked at the poinsettia. I looked at the red scarf coiled on the seat beside me like a sleeping fox. And I realized that something had shifted so gently I might have missed it if I had blinked. The evening had become mine. I pulled the notebook toward me again and wrote, I am not a guest in my own life. The sentence startled me, its plainness, its accuracy. I underlined it once and then again, not as an oath, but as a recognition. Some recognitions must be underlined. They hide in the margins otherwise. The bell above the door rang again. A man entered, middle-aged, brisk cold on his coat, phone in his hand as if it were fused there. He looked around with the impatience of someone who expects the world to be an extension of his will. When he saw me, he paused, surprised and guilt, then a manager's smile. Mom! The diner hushed without trying to. Tina's daughter lowered the music slightly. The boy leaned forward on his stool, bridge safe in pocket, ready to see if it would bear weight. I lifted my eyes to my son, not my daughter. He had always been one to call logistics the work of love and then outsource them. Hello, I said. He gestured with the phone. We were at the lake. The signal is awful. I tried to call. Claire realized she forgot to leave her pastry dough in the fridge, and Tina materialized, a calm front moving through. Care for some coffee? She asked him. He blinked. No. Yes. Maybe. I folded the scarf in my lap. Smooth once, smooth again. Sit, I said to him. Just sit. He sat. He looked at the candle, like it might judge him. He looked at the pie box like it might complain. We left you a note, Mom. I found it. We thought you always carry keys. I thought maybe he stopped. He did not have the right story prepared for this. You thought I'd be grateful, I said, not cruelly. You thought any invitation would do. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. It was chaos, he said finally. The kids were. There were so many bags. Claire's mother. I know, I said. Chaos is another word for our family. It has been for years. He looked at his hands. They were my husband's hands, all knuckle and winter. He was not a bad man. He was a busy man. Busy is a form of hiding that gets called competence. "Come back with me," he said suddenly, perhaps because he could not bear to be the kind of son who leaves his mother in a diner on Christmas Eve. "We'll drive back now. They'll want to see you." He looked around the diner, the poinsettia, the boy with the bridge, Tina's steady face, and he could not locate the lesson. He thought the solution was distance and gasoline. I glanced at the candle. The flame gave a small, almost imperceptible bow, as if to say, "You already know." "I'm staying," I said. "Here? In a diner?" "Yes," I said. "I have pie for breakfast. I have a candle for company. And I have already accepted an invitation." His mouth worked. Pride pressed against shame, pressed against a childhood. He remembered differently. "Mama," he said, using the soft word only when he was afraid. "Please, sit with me," I said, "if you can." The boy's father stared into his empty cup, knowing this was not his scene, and also very much his scene. The young woman with the suitcase watched like someone seeing her future come and go several times in a single hour. The older couple resumed their gentle argument to give us the decency of background noise. My son sat. Tina poured him coffee. He stared at the steam. "I'm sorry," he said at last. "For what?" I asked. "For the note, for leaving you out, for..." He trailed off because he had not practiced his confession. The words were not muscle. They were bone, unfamiliar and hard. "Thank you," I said. "I accept your apology." I let that sit. The room exhaled. Then I added, "And I am changing my traditions." He frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said gently, "that I will not chase invitations. I will not ride in a car that forgets where I live. I will not be the afterthought that still shows up with cookies." He swallowed. "So you're not coming?" "I am here," I said. "I am the one who decides where here is." He nodded slowly, like someone learned to waltz by counting aloud. He looked at the candle, at Tina, at the boy, at the older couple, at the girl with suitcase hands. He rubbed his jaw. Can I sit with you a while?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "You can sit." We sat. We shared the coffee. He ate the last bite of my sandwich without asking, which is how I knew he was still my child. After a time, he stood. He kissed my hair in that absent way men kiss their mothers when they are thinking of schedules. "I'll call you in the morning," he said. "Good night," I said. I did not say I love you first. It is not a rule. It is simply a new practice. He left, the bell ringing in his wake, the cold rushing in and then being defeated by the courage of the room. The candle steadied. I wrote in my notebook, "Apologies are doors. We must decide which ones we enter and which ones we accept as merely decorative." The boy swung his feet. "He'll be better," he said solemnly, as if making me a pact. "Maybe," I said, "and I'll be better too." "How?" "By saying what I need while the coffee is still hot." He grinned. The father nodded. Tina refilled my cup without asking. The poinsettia glowed its stubborn red. The scarf rested on my lap like a tame fire. I looked at the candle and knew what I wanted to do next. The motel had a vacancy sign that flickered as if it had learned to blink from a neon god. Painted holly leaves on the office window did their best to look cheerful. The night made them look heroic instead. Tina called ahead for me. "She's a friend," she told the clerk, which is possibly the holiest thing a person can say of another, and she boxed me a small parcel. The pie, plastic cutlery, a napkin folded like an origami bird. She also pressed a small matchbook into my hand, the kind with the diner's name on the cover in faded script. "For your candle," she said, "and for whatever else needs lighting." I walked to the motel beneath the sky, clearing reluctantly. The snow had stopped. The streetlights wore halos, smug and serene. I could hear the river blocks away, water gnawing gently at its banks, practicing the patience that stones teach. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old dreams. The bedspread was the color of a bruise, the lamp one of those that is better pretending to be bright than at actually illuminating anything. I set the pie on the small round table, placed the candle beside it, and lit the wick. Flame leapt up as if grateful to have been asked. I took off my coat. The scarf I laid over the back of the chair, where it could witness rather than weigh. I searched for the Bible they keep in the drawer and found it, thin pages fluttering like moth wings. I didn't read it. I put my notebook on top of it, a stack of paper testifying to the same desire, to make meaning out of the parts that otherwise would be random. I ate 3 polite bites of pie, and then 1 large, undignified bite that made me laugh out loud. The laugh surprised me. It cracked open something in the room. I reached for the notebook and wrote, "It is allowed to be both a vigil and a picnic." The phone on the nightstand blinked a red light, as if to say someone somewhere believes in reaching you. I did not pick it up. I let the room be small and exact. I let the candle scent the air with its clean, human smell, wax and wick, and the quiet theorem of fire. After a while, I took the envelope from my pocket, the invitation that had carried me to a door that did not open. I smoothed it on the table. I took one of Tina's matches. I did not burn the letter. It had brought me here. It had done its job, even in its failure. Instead, I folded it into a small boat, the way my husband used to fold napkins when he was worried and needed to pretend he was inventing a sail. I set the paper boat next to the candle, as if it were on a lake that did not freeze. I lay down and slept the kind of sleep that knows the next morning will require a decision. When morning came, it came softly, as if not wanting to startle me. The candle had burned down to a shallow lake of wax. The poinsettia on the diners still existed somewhere in my mind like a lighthouse. My phone was full of messages. My daughter, her voice dressing guilt and cheer. My son, clumsy with tenderness, a number I did not recognize, which turned out to be the father from the diner. "Thank you," the text read. "You steadied our night." I turned on the motel's small coffee maker and let it cough mediocre coffee into a flimsy cup. I ate the rest of the pie. I wrote a few lines. I put on the red scarf. I walked back to the diner, because the body sometimes knows before the mind does where it wants to be. The poinsettia was still there, stubborn and ceremonial. Tina's daughter had braided her hair differently. It ran down her back like a red sash. The boy and his father had already come and gone. The girl with the suitcase had caught her bus. The older couple had probably resumed their lifelong debate in another room with another spoon. But the diner was still the diner, and the candles still knew my name. Tina looked up. "Breakfast?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "And a pen, if you have one that writes like a promise." She handed me a pen with the diner's name on it, and a little flourish by the clip. I took out my notebook and wrote a letter. It was not to my daughter and not to my son. It was to my granddaughter. "My darling," I wrote, "I am learning a new Christmas. It has a candle and a red scarf and a pie that tastes like a future you can actually chew. It has a flower that pretends to be an ordinary plant and gets away with it because it is so bold. It has a matchbook that says, 'I may light what I need when I need it. When you are older and people forget a promise to you, come find me in the place where people bring their stormy selves and eat something hot to remind themselves they are still here. I will be there, braiding memories into rituals, teaching you how to fold an invitation into a boat that does not sink. Love, Grandma.'" I tore the page gently and folded it. Tina slid me an envelope from somewhere behind the counter. I addressed it, slid in a tiny sprig of green. She provided like conspirator. Then I asked for something that felt like a ceremony. "Would you mind," I said to Tina, "if we lit a second candle? Not here, at the table by the window, just for a minute." She nodded, not asking why. She brought a candle, struck a match, and together we watched the flame find itself. We stood in silence. When she took the candle back to the counter, I sat with my coffee and the pen, and the knowledge that a decision is a quiet animal that stands near you while you sleep and is still there when you wake. I finished breakfast. I paid. I slid the letter into my bag. I wrapped the scarf. At the door, I turned. "Thank you," I said, "for the pie." Tina asked. "For the invitation," I said, and left to do the rest of what I had come to do without knowing it. My daughter's house sat bravely in the tasteful neighborhood the way a mannequin sits bravely in a window, arranged, intentioned, brittle. I did not go there. I went instead to the small legal office 3 blocks from the diner, where the receptionist had a cardigan the color of clover and a laugh like bells that had been kissed by sugar. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I have a candle in my pocket, metaphorically speaking." She smiled. "Which kind of paperwork are we talking about?" "The kind where you decide who sits at your table," I said. An hour later, I sat across from a patient man who took notes carefully and asked questions as if he were trying to carry a delicate object across a room. We updated the papers that had been sleeping in a folder for too long. We spoke of beneficiaries and health proxies, and the long river of a life. I did not punish anyone. Punishment is a pastime for people with more time than I have. I simply set the table for the future I intend to attend. When we were done, I went back to the diner because the body knew what it wanted to do next, and the mind, for once, had the grace to follow. I ordered 2 pies to go. "Deliveries?" Tina asked. "Gifts," I said. I took one to the boy and his father, the address they had texted me scrawled on a torn envelope. The father tried to pay me. I refused. "Consider a bridge toll," I said, "for crossing." I took the other to the post office. I addressed it to my granddaughter, care of my daughter's house, because some things must still pass through the places where their absence was noticed. I enclosed a letter I had written in the morning. I enclosed a small matchbook with the diner's name. I wrote on a slip of paper, "For lighting what you need when you need it." I imagined her opening the box, eyes widening like the boy's, and I felt the candle's flame lift inside me, approving. At dusk, I returned to the diner for the last time that day. I sat at the same booth near the window. The poinsettia did not falter. The candle took the match like an old friend. The red scarf warmed me without performing hunger. Tina poured coffee. "How was your day?" she asked. "Established," I said. She laughed. "That's a new one." Established is when you place the chair where you actually want it and then dare the room to look different, I said. Established is when a diner becomes a church. We were quiet then, in the way people are quiet when words would be extravagance. The jukebox played something that sounded like a memory wrapped in velvet. The bell over the door announced a few more arrivals. One departure, a delivery boy with pepperoni promises. We were a city of our own. We issued passports in the form of napkins. I wrote my final note of the day. I forfeit the last invitation that treats me like a contingency. I accept the first invitation that treats me like a person. I close the notebook. I blew out the candle with the gentleness of someone who knows that endings are the truant of beginnings. I put on the red scarf. As I left, the poinsettia and I looked at each other one last time. We both had decided to be red in a season that often insists on white. It felt like a pact. Outside, the snow had ceased to argue with the world. The river sounded like breathing. I walked home without hurry. I did not look at my phone. I did not rehearse explanations. I did not inventory excuses. Sometimes, the most elegant thing you can do is walk at your own pace in your own weather. When I reached my door, I took the folded paper boat from my coat pocket. I set it on the step for a moment, as if to honor the vessel that had carried me from one shore to another. Then I picked it up and placed it on my windowsill, where the morning light would find it and tell it that all travel, even disappointing travel, teaches. Inside, I lit a candle. I sat at my small table. I cut a slice of leftover pie. I opened my notebook to a new page. The house did not feel empty. It felt particular. I wrote one last thing, one last sentence of the night, for the season, for the years I have left, and the girl who will one day be older than she thinks. I wrote it calmly, like a hand finding another hand in the dark. Love without respect isn't love. Presence without care isn't family.